So it is day 11 and it is Thursday. It's Thursday, January 30th. So for our do now today, we had this little worksheet, and I'll repeat again just for anybody watching the video and anyone that didn't hear it. The numbers I wrote up here are ones we did not learn how to do yesterday. So if you didn't know how to do them, you could just skip over them or you could give them a try. But let's go ahead and just start with number 1. And let me get this to focus. Okay. So number 1, I have got an equation that is y equals 7 over 2x minus 2. So what is the very first thing I'm looking at when I want to graph an equation? Yes. We're looking at our y-intercept, which is going to be the number at the very end here, the minus 2. And since that is our y-intercept, we're going to graph it on the y-axis, going up and down. So am I going to go up 2 or down 2? Down 2, good. So that's my first point, down 2. Okay. So what number in this equation are we looking at next? The 7. I'm going to go ahead and circle 7 over 2 as a whole. And what is 7 over 2 in my equation? What's the word for that? The slope. Good. So this is our slope. And if we remember, slope is telling us our rise over our run. So, Jenny, we're looking at 7, you said. Is that our rise or is it our run?
Oh, that's our rise.
That's our rise. So, starting from the point we just graphed at 0, -2, if we're rising 7, should I go up 7 or down 7? Up 7. Good. So, I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's how high up I go. I go up to 5. And what's my run? 2. So for run, I'm going either left or right. Right. Good. So I'm going to go to the right. 1, 2. Right here. Okay. So there's my 2 points. Now before we connect the dots and finish our line, does anybody have questions about how we got either of these points? Or does everybody feel okay about those? Okay, so let's grab a ruler and just line it up on those little points we made and connect the dots. There we go. Perfect. Now just for a little extra practice, let's also label the points. Let's write their coordinates. So I'm going to go ahead and put some empty parentheses here. What would my first point be? What would that coordinate be?
0, -2.
Good. 0, -2. And how about my second point? 5 is our y, so let's remember x comes first. Yes, 2, 5. Good. Does anybody want a refresher on where the 2 and the 5 come from? Okay, perfect. So remember the x value is first. So we're looking at the x-axis. That's the one that goes left to right. So I'm going to look at my point and trace down to the x-axis and see where does it line up with on the x-axis? And in this case, it lines up with 2. So that's where the 2 comes from. And then we're just going to do the exact same thing for our y value. We're going to remember that the y-axis is the line that goes up and down. So we're just going to trace from our point that we plotted over to the y-axis and see where does it line up with. It's really tiny and hard to see, but that is a 5. So 2 is our x, 5 is our y. All right. Any questions about that one? Okay, so let's skip over the challenge ones for now. We're going to come back to those in a bit. So I'm not worried about 2 or 3 just yet. Can I move down to number 4? Does anyone still need to see this? Okay, I'm going to scooch my paper down to 4. So here's another one. Number 4, I've got y equals 6 over 5x plus 1. What am I putting on my graph first?
First you're going to do 1.
Yes, I see plus 1 at the end, so that's my y-intercept. So that's where I'm going to put a point on the y-axis. I'm going to go up 1. Perfect. Yes. So now we're going to use our slope, which is 6 over 5. So what's our rise going to be? 6. So I'm going up 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and off the graph, 6. Goes up a little higher than they gave us.
Over 5.
Good. So our run is 5. So we're going to go over 5 to the right. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Right there. So I'm going to put 7 right here because that's what this line would be. And there's our second point. Let's connect the dots and then we'll come up with our coordinates. Even though this one is off the graph, we'll still label it. It's just a little higher than I thought it would go. Okay, so here's our line. What is the coordinate for our first point?
0, 1.
Perfect. 0, 1. Now our second point, what would this be?
6, 5.
6, 5. Let's see.
Sorry,
Aw.
5, 6.
Okay, so 5 is our x. Good. 7. We actually went 1 above 6. I know 7 isn't on the graph, but this one would be 7. You see how we had to jump 1 higher than 6 for that one? So it will line up with 7. And that one's kind of a trick since it wasn't given to you on the graph. So remember the x comes first in the coordinate. And I'll go through that again. Here's my x-axis. When I trace my point down to the x-axis, I see that it lines up with 5. That's where my 5 came from. And my y-axis goes up and down. So when I trace my point over to the y-axis, I see it lines up with where would be 7. I know there's not a 7 there, but I wrote one. It would be 7. Okay, so there that is. Do we have any questions about number 4? Okay, anybody still need to see this, or can we go to 5? Okay, let's go ahead to number 5. So, what do I do first?
Go to 2.
Yep, we're going to start with our y-intercept up 2. Okay. Now we're going to use what numbers next?
1.
1 and which other? Yes, 1 and 4. 1/4. That's our slope. So my rise is what? 1. And my run is going to be 4. So from my first point, I'm going up 1, over 1, 2, 3, 4. There it is. So we'll connect the dots and then we're going to label our points again. Okay. So what would the coordinate be for our first point? Perfect. 0, 2. And how about the second one?
1.
So 4 for our x, correct. And what would our y value be? 3. Yeah, so 3 is going to be our y value. That's where it lines up on the y. That's where it lines up on the y-axis. Were you using the number from the slope?
Yeah.
That's okay. That is okay. So,
reversed my number.
right. That is so all right. All right. Any questions about number 5? All right. Let's go ahead and flip to the back side. And we're going to skip 7 and 8 for now. And let's look at number 9. Okay. So, for number 9, what do I do first? Plus 3. So that's my y-intercept. So I'm going to go up 3 on the y-axis. Right there. And what numbers do I use next?
3. 1 and 3.
I've got 1 and 3. Now, is it positive 1 and 3 or is there a negative there? There's a negative. So this is negative 1/3. Now, whenever we write this out as a fraction, remember, it's our slope is negative 1 over 3. We only put a negative on 1, not on the 3, because a fraction is just another way to write a division problem. So really, it's kind of thinking about this as negative 1 divided by 3. If I put negative signs on both of these numbers, if you divide a negative by another negative, it turns into a positive. They would cancel out. So to keep this a negative slope, we only put the negative sign on that top number there. Okay? Does that make sense, you guys? Okay. And I think it'll make even more sense when we see how it looks as a line. So, if my slope is negative 1 over 3, what is my rise and what is my run?
Your rise is negative 1.
Good. So if my rise is a negative number, do I go up or down? Down. And that means my run has to be 3. And that's always to the right. So, starting from 3 on the y-axis, from my first point, I'll use my rise first. So where do I go?
Down to 2.
Down negative 1, so that's going to land us on 2 right here. And now that I've used my negative 1 rise, I went down 1. What do I do next?
Go over 3.
Good. Go over 3. Run 3. So 1, 2, 3 right here. Perfect. Oh, so we'll just connect the dots. Okay. And let's name our coordinates again. So what would our first point be? The orange one. 0, 3. Good. And if you notice, you'll kind of see a pattern. The first point we plot, the y-intercept, the x is always 0, and the y is always whatever that number is. So 3, 0, 3. Okay, so how about our second point? Yes, 3 is our x value. 2 is our y value. I see that it lines up with 3 on the x-axis and 2 on the y. And I don't expect you to circle those numbers or anything. I'm just showing for a little more clarification. Okay, any questions on number 9? Okay. Now, I do want to point something out. Whenever we have a negative number for our slope, okay, notice we have negative 1/3. Notice how the line is tilting down. Negative slopes are always going to be a downward slope. When we have a positive number, if I flip back to the front, this is a positive slope. It's going to be going from, if I'm reading left to right, my slope goes up. It's an uphill slope. This is a positive slope for number 4, and it goes uphill. Positive slope on number 5, it's going uphill. But as soon as we get to number 9 here, and we have a negative slope, it's going to be going downhill. So it's a good thing to remember that if you have a negative slope, your line better be going down. That way you can check and make sure you graphed it correctly. Okay, so let's look at number 10 now. What should we do first? Perfect. We're going to go down to -4 on the y-axis. And what's our slope? 1/5. Good. So what's my rise and what's my run?
Your rise is to go up to -3.
Good.
Up 1.
Up 1, which lands me on -3.
Right 5.
And then my run is 5, so I go to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right here. Awesome. Okay, and then we're going to connect the dots and name our points. So what is the coordinate of my first point?
0, -4.
Yes, 0, -4. And how about my second one?
5, -3.
Yes, 5 for my x, -3 for my y. Perfect. That is wonderful. Oh, just remember x, y. Okay. All right, we got one more that aren't included in the challenge problems. Before I move on to number 11, does anybody still need to see number 10 or have questions? Okay, let's go to number 11. So what is my first point? Where do I go first? -2 on the y-axis, so I'm going to go down 1, 2. There we go. What's my slope? 1/2, 1/2. So rise 1, run 2. Rise over run. So from my point at -2, where do I go from here?
-1.
Yep, up to -1. And where then?
Over 2.
Over 2. 1, 2. Right here. That's good. Okay, we'll connect the dots. We'll name our points. All right. Okay, so what is the coordinate for my first point?
0, -2.
Perfect. 0, -2. And my second one?
2, -1.
Yes. 2, -1. Amazing. Amazing. Okay, guys. We're starting to get pretty quick with this. That's awesome. Awesome, awesome. Any questions about any of these at all? Okay. So, before we talk about the challenge ones, I would like to give a little instruction on these by taking some notes. That way we can reference it and all the things I'm teaching you aren't on a random worksheet that we might lose. So, I'm going to put this to the side for a minute, and I am going to get out some graph paper. So if you need graph paper, there is some at the front of the room, and I've also got a bunch of this paper up here that already has the graphs drawn out. However, I think I'm going to use a paper like this right now because I want to be able to write some words, and there's not a ton of space for words on this one. But if you want extras of these, I'm going to put some at the front of the room. I'll put these up higher so y'all don't have to bend over in front of everybody. There you go. Graph paper up here if you need it. Alright, I'm going to pause this for a moment while everyone is getting their notes out and ready. Alright, so I'm going to label my page. Algebra 1. And we're in Unit 2. This is page 1 of my notes today. And it's day 11. It's Thursday, January 30th. I'm going to give this a little title. I'm going to call it Graphing Linear Equations. Now, we have been learning how to graph linear equations in slope-intercept form, where we have y equals m for our slope, x plus b for our y-intercept. So, off to the side, m equals slope this is just a repeat of what we were talking about yesterday. Y-intercept. Okay. And we also know that slope is rise over run. And in all of the problems I've given you since yesterday, our slope has always been written as a fraction. We usually see in problems like we did on the worksheet, for example, that first one was 7 over 2, or 6 over 5, or 1/4. But what do we do whenever we have a problem like number 2, where the slope is not a fraction, where it's -6?
You add this,
We don't add 6. It's a good guess, though.
you divide.
Kind of. You kind of divide. I'm gonna tell you. So all we're gonna do is write -6 as a fraction. Okay. So I'm gonna write that one down here. Let's see. I'm going to write a little title. What if slope is not a fraction? So for example, I'm going to write that problem from number 2. Y equals -6x plus 3. So if I have a whole number as my slope, we just need to turn it into a fraction. And does anybody know how to turn a whole number into a fraction?
You put it over 1.
You put it over 1. That's it. So if you have a slope of -6, instead of just keeping it as -6, we would change it to -6 over 1. So for a slope of -6, what would my rise be? Yeah, my rise would end up being -6. And what would my run be? 1. So anytime you have a whole number, your run will always be 1. Always. All you have to do is put the number over 1. So I'm going to write on number 2 on my worksheet that since my slope is -6, just like we said above, the slope is actually negative 6 over 1. My rise, I'm going down 6. My run over 1. Now what about, let's see, do we have another one like that? What about number 12 on the back of the worksheet? What's my slope for number 12?
2 over 1.
Yes, it's 2, so we're going to change it to 2 over 1. My slope is 2 over 1. So my rise is 2, my run is 1. So anytime there's a whole number, that's all we do. We just put it over 1. Turn it into a fraction. So now that we know that little rule, let's see if we can do number 2 and number 12. We'll do those next. And before we go to that, does anybody need to see this? Anybody still writing? Are you writing still? Are you sure? Okay. All right, number 2. I already identified my slope. Hang on, let me get that to focus. Okay. And what is my y-intercept?
3.
3. Perfect. My y-intercept is 3. So where do I go first? Positive 3 on the y-axis. Very good. So there's my first point. I did my y-intercept, and now let's use our slope. Where do I go from there?
Down 6.
Good. Down 6. So I'll end up at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, negative 3, and over 1. Right there. You just move it over 1. And you'll notice after we connect the dots, we have a negative slope. So our line should be going down, and it is. It's a line facing down, downhill. That is good. So let's name our coordinates. What's that first point? Perfect, 0, 3. And how about the second one?
Is it 1, negative 3?
1, negative 3. Yes, that is perfect. Amazing. 0, 3, and 1, negative 3. Awesome. So I'll trace those again just to give us a little helpful reminder. 0, 3, we know that. So let's look at the second one. We're looking at the x value first. There's the x-axis. My point lines up with 1 on the x-axis. So 1 is my x value. And then my y-axis, it lines up with, I kind of crossed out the numbers, but that says negative 3. So that's where the negative 3 and the 1 come from. Okay. Any questions? You guys feel okay about that one? Okay, good. All right, let's flip to the back, unless, does anybody still need this? Can I move it? I'm moving it. All right, let's look at number 12, now that we know our rule for whole number slopes. So our slope is 2, so we changed it to 2 over 1. So we have our rise and our run. What's my y-intercept? 5, yes. So where do I start? Up to 5. Yes, yes, yes. And this is another one that goes off the graph a little. Where do I go from there?
Go down to 3,
Yeah, so this is a positive 2. Now, I actually want to explain something that you could do to make this not go off the graph. However, whenever we take a quiz, I'm not going to give you problems where you have to do this. Our slope is 2 divided by 1, 2 over 1. If you take 2 negatives, that would still be positive. So what if instead of positive 2 over positive 1, what if I did negative 2 over negative 1? So I went down and to the left instead of up and to the right. So let me show you how that would look. I'm not expecting you to do this, but I do want to just show you that it exists. So we're rising 2. So we're going to go up 1, 2, and we're at y equals 7 now. You kind of have to make a new point. And what's my run? 1. So I just go over 1 to the right. So there's my second point. That's using the positive 2 over 1. Here's what happens if I decide to do negative 2 over negative 1. So I would go down 2, 1, 2, and over to the left 1. So my point would be on my graph, and when I connect the dots, it's going to go through this point anyway. Okay, you see how this is the second point that we found if we did positive numbers. If I decide to just kind of flip the slope around, it's a point that this line is going to be on anyway. Okay, we just went a different direction to find it. So you could do that with any slope. If I wanted to, for example, I'm going to look at number 11. My slope was 1/2. My rise was up 1 over 2 for run. I could go down 1 over 2 to the left. And that's on my line. See that? I can do it the opposite way. Or let's see. I don't know. We could do that with any line. Now, I don't want to be throwing too much information at you and getting you confused though. So, if that has got you thrown off, just pretend I didn't say it. If it makes a lot of sense and you think it's cool, then awesome. But if not, it's not something I'm going to be testing you over. That's going to be something we talk about a little more in Algebra 2. We don't need to worry about it yet. So, we're just worried about the basics. But it does exist, just letting you be aware of it. I won't expect you to know it. All right, so now we know if we have a slope that is a whole number, we just put it over 1 and we treat it like a fraction. Good deal. Now, what if I'm going to give you another what if question. Yes?
Can we go back to number 12 and name them?
Yes. Oh, yes, I completely forgot. Thank you. Let's name our points for number 12. So, what would our first coordinate be for number 12?
0, 5.
0, 5. Perfect. And how about that second coordinate up here?
7, 1.
7.
No.
Oh, yes, 1, 7. It's a little trickier to see when it goes off the graph like that. But yes, 1, 7. Good. Good. All right. And just for fun, I'll name this one too, but you don't need it. So ignore me if you want to, but I'm going to name this one. That would be -1, 3. Okay. All right. Anybody still need this? Can I move it? All right. So now there are still a few more that we have not addressed. We have equations where we have, let's see, What if we have an equation like number 3, where it just says y equals -5? Okay, that's interesting. Y equals -5. So here's what happens. If y equals -5, that means we're going to find -5 on the y-axis. So let's just start with that. Y equals -5. So we're going to go down to -5 on the y-axis. And if you notice, that's all they tell us. Y is -5. So what this means is that no matter where I am on the x-axis, y is always -5. So when x equals 0, right here, y is -5. When x equals 1, y is -5. When x equals 2, y is -5. When x equals 3, y is -5. Because this is where it's lining up, right here. See that? So this is the y-axis. Here's -5. Every point that you possibly could put on this line is going to be at the height of -5. You're going to go down 5 every single time. So you could plot 1,000,000 points, you could plot 2 points. It doesn't matter. If you have an equation that just says y equals a number, it's going to be a straight line going from left to right at whatever number they tell you. So we'll take a note on that so we can remember and look back at it later. Y equals -5. This one's tricky. And I'm going to show you a little trick for remembering that, because I remember being in high school and whenever I saw an equation like this, it was like my brain would just turn off. It made no sense to me. And I thought I just had to memorize it, but I want to show you a way that you don't have to just memorize it. I want it to make sense to you. So we're going to come back to this. Let's go back to our note page and let's take a little note. Okay, so how to graph y equals a number. Okay, and then we're going to give some examples. Let's say we have y equals 2. Okay, that's our whole equation. We've got y equals 2. The steps I would suggest taking are these. I would say, instead of trying to plot the points first, let's work backwards and start with the coordinates. So I'm going to say step 1. Come up with at least 2 coordinates. So here are our empty parentheses. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by labeling my x and y. I know x comes first and y comes second. So your y value is going to be whatever number they tell you. So in this case, it says y equals 2. So in your coordinates, y should always be 2. Always. And then your x can be any number you pick on the graph, any number. So I'm going to write here, I'm going to kind of label this. X can be any number. And I'm going to tell you, I will always suggest pick a small number like 0, 1, 2, or 3, something like that. So I'm going to pick 0 and 3, just for example. Those are random numbers I picked. Random numbers. And then I'm going to write that y is given to you in the equation, y equals 2. So y is the number given in y equals 2. Okay. And we're going to take these coordinates and put them on a graph. And I'll show you that next. So I'm going to make a little graph beside this here. It doesn't have to be too big. It doesn't have to be perfect. Got 1, 2, 3, -1, -2, -3, -1, -2, -3, 1, 2, 3. I've got my y-axis goes up and down, and my x goes left to right. And I'm going to pause for a minute before I move on. I gave you a lot of things to write, and I don't want to give you instruction while you're writing because it's not gonna soak in your brain. So I'm going to pause the recording and let you guys get caught up for a minute. So we just came up with 2 coordinates. We picked whatever number we wanted for x. And then we found y because it was given to us. We know y is 2, so y is always 2. So step 2 is to plot the points on the graph. Or the coordinates. Those words are interchangeable. Okay, so for my first point, 0, 2, I'm going to go over 0 on the x-axis. I'm not going left or right. My y is 2, so I go up 2. That's my first point. 0, 2. And the second point I chose was 3, 2. So my x is 3, I go over to 3 on the x-axis. My y is 2, I go up 2. 3, 2. So now I have 2 points, and what do I do there? Draw a line, connect the dots. Very good. And that would be my graph. That'd be my line. So anytime it says y equals a number, It's always going to be a line going horizontally straight across at whatever number they give you on the y-axis. So since it's y equals 2, we're going left to right, passing through 2 on the y-axis. And I will always recommend doing it. I know it seems silly to come up with the coordinates and go through these steps sometimes because it's like, well, I could just remember that it goes left to right. But the reason I used to mix it up so much is because we remember the y-axis goes up and down. So what I would always do to mix it up and make a mistake on is I would draw a line going straight up and down through 2 on the x-axis, and that would be wrong. It's good to make sure that we understand why we're drawing it left to right. It's because we're going up to 2 on the y-axis. Up to 2 on the y-axis, no matter where my x is. If x was 2, y is still 2. If x is 1, y is still 2. You could put your points anywhere. Does this make sense to everybody? Do we have any questions? Do we want to talk about it a little more? Let's do another example like this. Make sure we got it. One more example. Let's see. Here's another example. What about y equals 1? I'm going to draw another little graph, and this one's going to be even smaller because I only need to go up 1 here. 1, 2, negative 1, 1, 2, negative 1, negative 2. Okay, my y is up and down, my x is left to right. Okay, so whenever I have an equation that says y equals 1, what's the first thing I should do? And we can look back at the steps I had you write down. We're going to try and come up with some points, right? So it says come up with at least 2 coordinates or points. So I'm going to write 2 empty sets of coordinates. And just to remind myself, and I think it's always a good thing to start with, we're going to put a little x above the first place and a little y above the second place. It's so easy to mix that up. X is first, y is second. So what can I put already, what's given to me in my coordinates?
0, 1.
Yep, I could do 0, 1. And how'd you come up with the 0 and the 1?
Because the y equals 1.
Because the y equals 1, absolutely. And how did you pick 0 for x?
Because it's on.
You can pick any number.
It's kind of a trick question. It can be any number. It can be any number. You could have picked 1,000,000. Absolutely. 0, 1 is perfect. That's exactly right. How about another coordinate? Can someone give me another point?
I did
2, 1. Absolutely. So see, y is always going to be 1 because the equation is y is 1. Y equals 1. It's always 1. X can be anything. I always suggest small numbers for x though. So let's plot these. 0 on my x, so I'm not moving left to right. 1 for my y, so I go up 1. Okay, and I'll just call this point A and point B. So I'll label this as point A. And where should I go to label point B? Good, over 2, up 1. Right there. There's B. And what do I need to do last?
Draw
Draw a line, connect the dots. That's it. And there it is. We graphed the line. And it goes straight across left to right. Awesome. Let's do one more like that, just for good measure, and then I'll give you a break. I know, I think we're all falling asleep today. It's been a long week. Like, for no reason. I think every person I've talked to has had a rough week. Every person. I know I've had a rough week. It's been crazy. But we're here. Let's try y equals 3. Draw the graph. And make sure that your y-axis goes at least up to 3. Yeah, my graph looks a little funky. I didn't really give myself enough room. But, you know, it works. It'll work. Okay. Okay, I've got my graph, kinda. I've got my y equals 3. What should I do to graph this line? Yeah, let's pick some coordinates. So I'm going to write 2 empty coordinates. You could do more if you wanted to, but you just need at least 2 to draw a line. And then I'm going to label my x's and my y's. I always like to do that because even though I've been doing this for years, even I mix them up sometimes. It's never a bad idea to label them, ever. I like to label everything. Okay, so what do I know for sure about both of these coordinates that cannot change? 3 for x or y. For y, it tells me right there, y is 3. So, y is 3. We're going to go ahead and fill in the 3's. What can x be? Anything. X can be anything. What? Give me some numbers. 3. How about another one? 1. Awesome. Let's plot them.
Also, the first coordinate can be any number too.
Any number. Yep, absolutely. You can pick 0 if you want, but you actually don't have to.
Okay.
It can be any number in the world, as long as it fits on your graph and I can see it. So, let's plot this. If x is 3, we go over 3 on the x-axis. Y is 3, we go up 3. There's, we'll call that point A. And for point B, where should I go to plot it? 3 up or over?
You said for part B.
Yes, for point B, the second one right here. My x is 1, so do I go up 1 or over 1? Over 1, good. And then up 3, good. There it is. So there's point A and point B. And all that's left to do is what? Connect the dots. That's it. Yay! Oh, yes. That is it. That's all. All right, guys, go take a break. It's 10:25. I would love for you guys to come back. Let's say I'm starting a little later this time. Just by 10:40. By 10:40, come back. And we're only going to do a little bit more after the break. I don't want to keep you. So, enjoy your break, and I'll see you in like 15 minutes. Unpausing. So we're back from our break. We've been working on graphing equations that are just y equals a number. Okay? And remember, whenever we do this, you just pick a random number for x. Your y is always whatever number they give you. So, we graphed number 3 on that worksheet. Y equals -5, just a straight line across at -5. I believe there's another one like that somewhere. Nope, there's not. Okay. Number 6. Oh, okay, this is a different one. This is x equals. So, let me ask you, without me telling you, if in a graph that's y equals, y is always whatever number they give you, what do you think a graph with x equals is going to be like? You're going up and down. It's going to be the same process, except for this time, your x is always 5, and you pick a random number for y. It's just the exact opposite. So, let's put 2 coordinates over here, and I'm going to label my x's and my y's. I just think that's a good habit to be in. So, for number 6, our equation is x equals 5. So what number do we already know for our coordinates? X is 5 for both of them. So let's go ahead and put a 5 on x. And it's not a bad idea to go ahead and find 5 on the x-axis on your graph and just mark that. There's 5 on the x-axis, right there. Remember, the x-axis is going left to right, and there is 5. Okay? So give me some numbers for y. 1. What else? 2. That works. Okay, so x is 5, so we're always going to be going over 5. If y is 1, we'll go up 1. So let's say this point is A, 5, 1. We'll call 5, 2 B. Where would 5, 2 be? Just up 1 more. Good. Perfect. And this is the same thing to think about. Your x is always 5. Your y, no matter what y you pick, it's always going to be at 5 on the x. I could draw a million dots wherever I want. And what's our line going to look like when we connect the dots? Just straight up and down. Yeah. Straight up and down at whatever number they give you for x, which in this case it's x equals 5. So that is the graph of the line for x equals 5. Not so bad. So anytime they just give you one number, just see what letter did they give you to. And if they give you an x is 5, your x is always 5. If they give you y is 5, your y is always 5. So, on our notes, I'm going to start a new page and just make another little key for us to be able to look back at. So I'm going to write page 2, because that's what page I'm on. And I'll label my page again. This is day 11, notes continued. Okay. So whenever we have a graph that is y equals a number, it looks like a line that is horizontal going from left to right. When we have a graph of x equals a number, we have a line that goes up and down at whatever number they give you. So there's just a little key to help us remember, a little guide. Y equals goes left to right. X equals goes up and down. Okay, let's see if we have any other x equals. Yes, we do. Number 8. Let's look at number 8. X equals 0. So I'm going to make 2 coordinates, label them x and y. And because our equation is x equals 0, what number do we already know? 0. Our x value and our coordinates will be 0 for both of them. And let's find x equals 0 on the graph. So there's our x-axis. And when x equals 0, where is that? I don't see a 0. Right in the middle, right in between -1 and +1. Right there at the crossroads, that's right. And what can y be? Anything. Anything on the graph. So give me 2 random numbers.
3 and 4.
3 and 4. I'll call that A and B so I can label them. So for point A, 0, 3, I'm going over 0 for x. And where do I go for y? Up 3. 1, 2, 3. There's point A. And how about point B? Where do I go now? Just up 1 more to 4. There's B. And then we just connect the dots. Now, what would this point in the middle be named? Let's call it C. Just for fun, what would that coordinate be? 0, 0. Good. 0, 0. 0, 0 is always the point right in the middle. So we connect the dots. We've got a line going up and down. Just like that. Amazing. Amazing. Okay. Good. Good, good, good. Okay, so there's only one more type of problem, I believe, on this paper that we haven't gone over. We've done just about all of them. I've learned a lot today, guys. Let's look at number 7. That's the last one to do. So, in most equations, especially in slope-intercept form, you have a slope, which is the number right before the x, and then your y-intercept. It's whatever number's at the end, plus something or minus something. What's missing in number 7? The intercept. We don't see an intercept, okay? We have a slope, so let's go ahead and label our slope. I know my slope is what? 5 over 3. Okay, so what's my rise? 5. And it's positive, so we go up 5. What's my run? 3. Positive, so run 3, that's to the right. And we don't have an intercept. So if they don't give you plus something or minus something, what's happening here is in the equation y equals mx plus b, what's happening here is 5 over 3 is our m. Our b must be 0. Because if we write plus 0, I usually tell you, you don't really need to write plus 0. It's just nothing. So if there's ever an equation like this, y equals mx, nothing, you can assume it's plus 0 at the end. So if our y-intercept is 0, where would my first point go? At 0, at y equals 0. Very good. So we just start right here in the middle. We just start in the middle. So that first point, we'll call it A. Point A is 0, 0. Okay. So how do we find another point?
Go up 5.
Yep, go up 5 over 3. And what's really nice about when there's no y-intercept is it really helps us find our second coordinate, because we're really just using the numbers and the slope. What's our x value?
3, 5.
Yep, 3 and 5. 3 is where it lines up on the x-axis, right there. 5 on the y. So that's point B, and then we connect the dots. Not so bad. Amazing. Good job, guys. Okay. Very, very good. So, let's make another little note to help us remember. I'm going to write, what if there is no y-intercept in the equation? So let's see. What if there is no y-intercept, or b, in my equation? Just write that again, y equals mx plus b. So, like we just learned here, if we don't see a number, if there's not plus something, if there's not minus something, and there's a slope, you know, we have a slope, all that means is b is 0. That just means that b, or your y-intercept, equals 0. This means b equals 0. And what would that make our first point on the graph always? 0. 0, 0, 0. So, our first point is 0, 0. And in our notes, I'll put an example, because I know if you're anything like me, I'm going to look back at this and I see words and it doesn't mean anything to me. It means nothing to me, so I need a picture. So here's an example. I know we just did one on the paper, but let's get one on here as well. I have y equals 2x. Okay, let's draw a little graph. And I'm going to make my graph go up to 3. One, two, three, four. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. There's my X and my Y. Okay. So I have Y equals 2X. So the first step whenever we're graphing an equation is always to find our y-intercept and graph it. And since we don't see a number for the y-intercept, something we can do to write and remind ourselves is I like to write +0, just to help me remember. So where does my first point go? So 2 is our slope, right? What's our y-intercept? 0. So where does my first point go? 0. 0 at the crossroads. Good. So that's my first point. I'll call that point A, 0, 0. I'll label my X and Y. And I don't know if it helps, I'll make this orange so you can see that this came from the y-intercept. That's where that came from. Okay, that's point A. And how do I find my next point? Yes, I'm going to use my slope. My slope is 2, so I go up 2, but my slope's a whole number. What do I need to do? It's 2. How do I make that into a fraction? Just put it over 1. So my slope is 2, or 2 over 1, rise 2, run 1. So I go up 2, and where's my run? Where do I go? Over 1. Good. That's my second point. And what is the coordinate for point B?
1, 2.
Over 1 up 2. Yep, 1, 2. Perfect. Perfect, perfect. Okay. Awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay. Let's do one more just like that, just to get it really stuck in our brains. One more example. Y equals -3x. And I'll draw my graph. One, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Oops. 1, 2, 3, 4. And there is no reason that I have 2 dashes on x is -1. I just messed up. So ignore that. There's no reason for that. Okay. Y equals negative 3x. Hi, Holly. Here, I'll pause this. So, y equals negative 3x. Somebody guide me through how to graph this. Who wants to do it?
0.
0. Okay, so 0, y. Y as in, I'm asking you the question y. I'm not saying letter y. How'd you know that we're starting at 0?
Because it's in the middle.
Because it's
Nothing
in.
on the X.
Yes. So we have a slope of negative 3 here. We have y is negative 3x, but there's nothing that's giving us anything to tell us to go up or down. There's no plus something, no minus something. So it's plus 0. It's invisible. So we start at 0, just like you said. Perfect, Lisa. Perfect. And I'll go ahead and write that coordinate out. 0, 0. Okay. That'll be point A. And I'll label my X and my Y. So I have my first point. What should I do next? Where do I go from here?
Go down negative 3.
Go down negative 3. Then what?
And 1.
Over 1. Good. Because our slope is negative 3. And what is negative 3 as a fraction?
Negative 1.
Negative 3 over 1? Yes, negative 3 over 1. So our rise was negative 3. We went down 3. Our run was 1. We went over 1. So there's my points. And let's label point B as a coordinate. What would that be? 1, negative 3. Good. And we just connect the dots. Connect the dots. Very, very good. Okay. All right, guys. I've wore us out enough today, I think. You guys are awesome. You're learning. We're doing stuff. It is wonderful. I think we're all tired today. I am too. That's going to be all we talk about today. No exit ticket because it's Thursday, and I'm going to keep to that promise. All that you have due tomorrow is the day 10 exit ticket from yesterday. If you already turned it in and I gave it back to you graded, then you've got nothing due and you're free. So that is it. I'm going to end the recording here. If anyone wants to stay and get more practice, you're so more than welcome. But if not, you're free to go.